because he changes format. He's changed the format for this particular lecture from the standard that we would have found in the past. He's going to be, really the emphasis is from the true aspect of all phenomena. There's going to be a very short bit of that I'll read. We've already got it. There's a lot of videos. Anybody that's watching, on YouTube, you can go back through our videos. So we've already read the true aspect of all phenomena on a couple of occasions. Mr. Saito's did it. I've read it. But Soka Gakkai Official has just released, I don't know how old this video is, but it's called The Long Journey of the Lotus Sutra, a Message of Peace and Coexistence. And since the whole theme of this lecture is going to be on the Bodhisattvas of the earth, that's something that's derived from the Lotus Sutra, frankly. Okay, so if you find that on YouTube, again, Soka Gakkai Official, I don't know but this is I don't know if you can see this, okay? I'm going to just kind of go. This is for the caves in Dunhuang, okay? This is where the scrolls were kept. And so I just want to qualify again, as we talk about the Lotus Sutra, we have to understand what the Lotus Sutra actually is, okay? It's a teaching of Shakyamuni, but it was passed down. I mean, how did Shakyamuni's teachings get passed down? What sutras did Shakyamuni write? None. There was no writing at the time that he was alive, okay? When he died, all his disciples got together and gathered, and they had a little meeting in a cave. I don't remember the name of the cave, but that's where they put down, Ananda, basically, everybody could remember exactly what they were. They start putting them down. So when we talk about the Lotus Sutra, understand that it was an orally transmitted teaching for about 200 or 300 years before it actually started to be put down in Sanskrit. Pali was another written language that had come along at that time. But Kumarajiva's translation of the Lotus Sutra is really the basis of everything that the lineage that we follow is based upon. Okay, there's other translations or interpretations of the Lotus Sutra that exist. Okay, there's the Lotus Sutra of the Correct Law, that cave that I just showed you. The oldest known copy of the Lotus Sutra came from that cave. There was actually a sutra repository. Okay, so when we talk about that, understand that the Lotus Sutra itself, if you're going to go talk to academics, they would qualify that it possibly could have even been written by different people at different times. Okay, which wouldn't be in conflict with the reality that it had to be transcribed, it had to be created. Okay. And we talk about Shakyamuni and what's revealed in the 16th chapter. What's revealed in the 16th chapter? That he attained Buddhahood not in this lifetime under the Bodhi tree, and not even in Sanzen Jintingo, as he had already revealed it in the Expedient Means chapter, in Goyaku Jintingo, which is numberless major world system, dust particle kalpas ago. Our Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is based on a concept of Kuan-ganjo. Okay, and so rather than try to explain that, I'm just going to read the definition of Kuan-ganjo to you from the Buddhist dictionary, because understand that everything that President Ikeda is talking about, he's going to be praising Shakyamuni. Don't want you to misunderstand what he's really saying, because the original teacher is Nichiren. Okay, and President Ikeda qualifies that point blank many times, but I don't want anybody to misunderstand that we're somehow now praising the Lotus Sutra because it has the context of the emerging from the earth, chapter 15, where the Bodhisattvas of the earth appear. Okay, So we've talked about this before. Kuan Ganjo, literally Kuan means remote past and Ganjo, beginning or foundation. The term appears in On the Mystic Principle of True Cause, a work written by Nichiren in 1282 that's so heavy and so deep and probably so mystic, it's not been translated to be made available to us. Okay? I already know what it says without reading it. This work refers to the mystic law, uncreated and eternal, of the Buddha of beginningless time. The Buddha of beginningless time, Kuan Ganjo. That's farther back than Goyaku Jintingo, okay? And states the mystic law lies in the depths of the lifespan 16th chapter of the Lotus Sutra. Nichiren interprets Kuan Ganjo on two different levels. One, in the context of the lifespan chapter, Kuan refers to the remote past when Shakyamuni originally attained enlightenment, and Ganjo to the foundation of his original enlightenment, which would be, again, Goyaku Jintingo, right? Okay, numberless major world system, dust particle corpus. In the record of the orally transmitted teachings, Nichiren's oral teaching on the Lotus Sutra, compiled by Nikko in 1278, which is what I go by, it is stated Kuan means something that was not worked for, that was not improved upon, but that exists just as it always has. It's the original state, okay? Orally transmitted teachings continues. Because we are speaking here of the Buddha eternally, what's eternally? Forever. There's no beginning to eternally, okay? That's the original state. Endowed with the three bodies, it is not a question of something attained for the first time, or at a certain time, or of something that was worked for. So somebody that attained Buddhahood at Goyaku Jintingo, that's a first time. That was something that had to have been worked for in order, do you understand? So we're talking about two different Buddhas. Okay? But again, this Buddha nature, this eternal Buddha nature, is the Buddha nature that exists within everybody, within all things. Yep. All right? Which I'll explain again because I'm going to read chapter 15 real quick. Orally transmitted teachings. It's only 3 pages before we start doing this lecture. This is not the kind of Buddhahood that is adorned with the 32 features and 80 characteristics, or that needs to be improved on in any way. Okay, the spooky, weird stuff that, that is in the sutras, frankly. Because this is the eternal and immutable Buddha in his original state. He exists just as he always has. This is what is meant by Kuan. The same section of the orally transmitted teachings concludes, Kuan is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the original state. And true attainment means awakening to the fact that one is eternally endowed with the three bodies. What is the concept of all living beings? We've all existed forever. Okay? We don't have a beginning. We don't have an end. Mm-hmm. There's no such thing as death. There's no such thing as birth as it relates to the beginning of life. It's existed way before each time it happens. As I said once, we all laugh. Why is the reason that we're able to be born? Do you remember the answer? Because we've died, all right? You can't do it otherwise. You don't exist otherwise. Kuan is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, and true attainment means awakening to the fact that one is eternally endowed with the three bodies. It means that the Buddha nature has always existed in you. In essence, for Nichiren, Kuan or Kuan Ganjo means the eternal law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and the original state of life that embodies Buddhahood. It exists in me equally with Nichiren, with President. Everybody has this same eternal original state. Everything around us has this same original state. Okay? All three realms are considered living beings, right? So let's go to what, as we're going to discuss, let's talk about the 15th chapter, Emerging from the Earth. This is from the orally transmitted teachings. One important point. He only makes one point on chapter 15. Point 1, on the passage, among these bodhisattvas were 4 leaders. The first was called superior practices, which we know from studying Nichiren's teachings, he qualified that he was fulfilling the function of superior practices based on what had been written in the Lotus Sutra about the emerging from the earth of the Bodhisattvas of the earth. Okay, everybody with me? I'm not losing anybody, right? Okay. The first was called superior practices, the second was called boundless practices, the third was called pure practices, and the fourth was called firmly established practices. These 4 bodhisattvas were the foremost leaders and guiding teachers among all the group. And everybody remembers that when the bodhisattvas of the earth emerged from the earth, they were innumerable, and they had innumerable followers that were with them, okay? All right, so these 4 bodhisattvas were the foremost leaders and guiding teachers among the group. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, so this is straight from Nichiren. This is straight, he goes straight into his own interpretation of the emerging from the earth chapter, which is different from the way he handles almost the other ones. He always quotes either Tiantai or somebody like that, and then he says, the orally transmitted teaching says, okay, so this is saying straight from me. Don't have to, nobody else has ever talked about Kuan before. That's the whole point. Kuan is a concept that's really, it's in the Lotus Sutra, but it's not something that's really embellished or expounded upon. It couldn't be because it's really the teaching of the original teacher. It wouldn't be appropriate for it to appear anywhere else. This is the original teacher qualifying to us, his disciples, which are the original disciples. I'm going to get real emotional talking about all this. I'm sorry. We are the bodhisattvas of the earth. That's going to be the whole basis of this lecture. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says this chapter, emerging from the earth, is devoted entirely to matters pertaining to the bodhisattvas of the essential teaching. Now, when he's talking about that, he's not talking about the last 14 chapters. He's not talking about what Shakyamuni preached or what was handed down as his oral teaching. And finally, Kumarajiva wrote it out so that Tiantai could do his thing, and everything else that continued until it got to Dengyo in Japan and ultimately reached Nichiren for his advent to reveal Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. This is all about where we had to get to for the original state to be revealed for what it is. All right? He says, is devoted entirely to matters pertaining to the bodhisattvas of the essential teaching, those who were taught and converted by the Buddha in his true identity, which is the Buddha of Kuan. The action, now this is, again, we'll talk about from the perspective of the Lotus Sutra. You know, technically it's Goyaku Jintingo, okay? But Goyaku Jintingo isn't eternal. It's numberless major worlds. It gives a specific manner in which to calculate it. It's beyond your imagination. It's uncalculable in terms of its breadth, but it doesn't still go back to an original point. That's the whole point. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the original point, and it couldn't be expounded until it was time. The age had to be correct. We had to be in the latter day of the law for it to be revealed. Okay? So he says the action carried out by the bodhisattvas of the essential teaching is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. So if that's what that's saying, the action carried out by the bodhisattvas of the essential teaching is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, then the bodhisattvas of the earth that appear in the chapter, that emerge from the earth in chapter 15 and split again in chapter 23, okay, are an allegory for our manifestation in the latter day of the law. So you have to understand and perceive that the Lotus Sutra now is really only understood through the extrapolation of the teacher Nichiren. All right? He says, because he's the one that expounds Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. There is no other teacher that has expounded Nam-myoho Renge-kyo prior to him. All right? He is the original teacher. The original teacher has now made his advent. This is referred to in the character Sho, advocating, in the compound Shodo, or advocating and guiding, which is what we do. We advocate Chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and we guide people in the process of growing their faith so that they attain Buddhahood in their present form. All right? The character Do signifies that they will lead and guide all the living beings of the country of Japan to the pure land of Holy Mountain Eagle Peak, Nirvana, Buddhahood in your present form, eternal Buddhahood whenever it occurs within in conjunction with the entity that is represented by the temporary gathering of the 5 components, which is all living beings. As for these guiding teachers of the latter day of the law, so we're not talking about anything about Tentai or Myolo or Dengyo. That's all prior to, correct? Mm-hmm. All right. The term teachers can only be applied to the Bodhisattvas of the essential teaching of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. In explaining the identity of the 4 great Bodhisattvas described here, Volume 9 of Supplement to the Words and Phrases following the explanation given in Volume 9 of Words and Phrases says, the 4 leaders described in the sutra passage here represent the 4 virtues. Mm-hmm. They represent the 4 virtues. Don't think of superior practice, boundless practices, and everybody else. Firmly established practices and pure practices as dudes, as incarnate entities. Okay? They're aspects of us which are really all of that at one time. All right? He says the 4 leaders described in the sutra passage here, and this precedes Nichiren's when he's talking about based on the supplement to the words and phrases and words and phrases. All right, Tentai and something, some guy, I won't remember his name. Anyway, I took so much time to look all this up. Superior practices represents the virtue of true self. Actually, the 4 leaders described in the sutra passage here represent the 4 virtues. Superior practices represents the virtue of true self. True self, who you actually are. A disciple of the original teacher, your original disciple of the original teacher. Boundless practices represents the virtue of eternity. Pure practices represents the virtue of purity, and firmly established practices represents the virtue of happiness. And for purity, again, we're talking about the precept of the diamond chalice. We're not talking about Christian purity or Hindu purity or any other kind of purity. We're talking about pure faith in the correct teacher and the correct teaching. All right. There are times when a single person possesses all 4 of these principles. To transcend the 2 types of death, birth and death in the 6 paths, which we understand, right? There's 3 ways that you can live and die. Did everybody remember what they are? You can die in the first 6 realms, which gets you all the way to heavenly beings, but you never go any further than that. Mm-hmm. Where you can be birth and death in the higher realms, which would be voice, hearers, cause awakened ones, bodhisattvas. Those 3. Okay, but birth and death in the realm of Buddhahood is what we do. Okay, so he says that to transcend the 2 types, to transcend, which means we are now in the realm of birth and death in the realm of Buddhahood. That's transcending those other 2 types of birth and death. Do you understand what he's saying? Mm-hmm. This is complicated, and I'm sorry I don't want to go back and forth over it so much, but I want to make sure everybody's clear on what I'm saying. To go beyond the 2 opposing views that life is cut off, to transcend the 2 types of birth and death, in this, birth and death in the 6 paths and birth and death in the higher realms, is known as superior practices. To go beyond the 2 opposing views that life is cut off after one existence, or that it is eternally the same, is called boundless practices. To perceive the truth of what the temporary gathering of the 5 components is really all about, and to understand that everything is a living being, okay, including the earth itself. Boundless practices, to go beyond the 2 opposing views that life is cut off after one existence, or that it is eternally the same, is called boundless practices, because one overcomes the 5 categories of illusions and entanglements. That state is designated pure practices. You got your head out of the wrong teachings, the old teachings, the inconsequential teaching based on the age of the latter day. Okay, that's pure practices. Chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo is pure practices. And because one is as perfect in virtue as the Buddha who attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, that state is named firmly established practices, because as a Bodhisattva of the earth, you're equal to Shakyamuni as a teacher easily, because you teach Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay, you don't teach 50 different kinds of thinking that ended up being all those different schools and the confusion that's all created, but again, based on the karma of the people that embraced it. Nichiren and his followers, which all of us are, who now chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, are all followers of these bodhisattvas who emerged from the earth. Again, one may say that fire is that which burns things, and hence it corresponds to superior practices. Water is that which purifies things, and hence it corresponds to pure practices. Again, one may say that fire is that which burns things, and hence it corresponds to superior practices. Water is that which purifies things, and hence it corresponds to pure practices. Wind is that which blows away dust and grime, and hence corresponds to boundless practices. And the great earth is that which nourishes plants and trees and corresponds to firmly established practices. These are the respective merits of the four bodhisattvas. Though the practices of the four bodhisattvas differ from one another, all are in effect the practice of Myoho Renge-kyo. All are in effect the practice of embracing the Gohonzon in the latter day of the law and chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. These four bodhisattvas dwell in the lower region. Therefore, the commentary Words and Phrases, Volume 9, says that they dwell in the depths of the Dharma nature. In the depths of the Dharma nature, our Buddha nature. They dwell in the depths of our own Buddha nature. They all exist as functions of our own lives. Okay? That's why they're not separate dudes. Do you understand? The ultimate region of profound source. The lower region is where they live and abide, and the lower region represents the principle of truth. Supplement to the Words and Phrases says the lower region is described by Master Tao Xing as the place where one abides in principle, the state of non-substantiality, the ninth consciousness. If you're in the realm of birth and death, in the realm of Buddhahood, that's where you hang when you die before you're reborn again. Okay? You don't, it's a different non-substantiality than others. What emerge and become manifest from this dwelling in the principle are referred to as actual events. Again, the record of the orally transmitted teaching says that all of the 1,000 plants and 10,000 trees in the world, there are none that are not in essence bodhisattvas who emerge from the earth. So there's no separation between you and everything else in the phenomenal realm. Thus, we may say that the bodhisattvas who emerge from the earth are the bodhisattvas of the essential teaching. The bodhisattvas that are talked about in the Lotus Sutra in the 15th chapter are us in the latter day who chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. The word essential or original represents the merits handed down from the past of numberless major world system dust particle kalpas, the merits that are without beginning and without end. That the merits go back to Kuan Ganjo, but they're only expressed by Shakyamuni as Goyaku Jintengo because that's all he's qualified to reveal. Do you understand? Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is for the original teacher to reveal, Nichiren. Yes. These bodhisattvas, everybody's with me? Mm-hmm. These bodhisattvas, us, are possessors of the essential or original law, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. The original law is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. This Daimoku, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, is something that is without exception possessed by the bodhisattvas who emerge from the earth. But it is not possessed by the bodhisattvas of the theoretical teaching, those who were taught and converted by the Buddha in his transient status before the 16th chapter. Okay? From the provisional teaching. From the substance of this original law, from the substance of this original law is derived the function that is propagated as the practice of concentration and insight, what Tentai and everybody in his lineage was trying to get to, and is called the principle of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, Ichiden Sanzen. In effect, all the explanations given by great and ordinary teachers are directed toward the propagation of this function of the wonderful law. Everything that preceded Nichiren's advent was there for the purpose of supporting and allowing him in his advent to reveal the truth that is for all eternity, the entire latter day, which is without end. Okay? The accepting and upholding of this original law is expressed. The accepting and upholding of this original law is expressed in the single word belief or faith. The single word belief is the sharp sword with which one confronts and overcomes fundamental darkness or ignorance. It's where you make the break from being born in the realm of the first six realms or the higher worlds. This is what leads you. This is the sharp sword that cuts the severance to the delusion to enable you to enjoy and embrace and manifest the enlightenment of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. And the commentary words and phrases says, belief means to be without doubt. So we're talking about doubt-free faith. Yes. We're not talking about agreeing. Okay, we're talking about you're a bodhisattva of the earth. You don't see yourself in any other way. That means you must be a Buddha, frankly speaking. All right? You should think about this. And I've done a lot of that. Okay, so that's that. And now we're going to go to chapter 3 of volume 6 of Teachings for Victory and Kick Some Ass. Our mission, page 31. Our mission as bodhisattvas of the earth. This is from President Ikeda. Bodhisattvas emerging from the earth, what a powerful, vibrant, free. Give me one of these. I don't need them all in there. Bodhisattvas emerging from the earth, what a powerful, vibrant, free, and dynamic image. He's saying, imagine the image of the bodhisattvas of the earth emerging from the earth in the 15th chapter of the Lotus Sutra. Great bodhisattvas, completely without pretense or conceit, infinitely honorable and noble. Bodhisattvas of the earth, the very name conveys the inherent underlying strength of human life, because we all have that potential, even evil people. Bodhisattvas of the earth, here we find the starting point of the Soka Gakkai's mission. In the 192 countries and territories around the world today, our admirable members, Bodhisattvas of the earth, one and all, are joyously active, holding high the banner of the mystic law. The self-confident strides of ordinary people awaken to their noble mission for Kosen Rufu and to their inherent potential as they forge ahead, breaking through every obstacle, never giving up, never begrudging their lives. The vigor of our young men burning with a commitment to truth and justice, the inspiring endeavors of our pure-hearted young women, the shining smiles of our cheerful women, the purposeful steps of our dauntless men, the ringing voices of our lively future division members. Our great Soka movement, a gathering of bodhisattvas of the earth, is forging ahead steadily everywhere, in North and South America, in Europe, in Russia, in Africa, in the birthplace of Buddhism, India, and in all of Asia, in Oceania, and all around the globe. Nichiren Daishonin writes, the sun rises in the east. Pardon me. I got to gather myself before I do this. Excuse me. It's been raining for 3 weeks. I think I'll have a little bit of sniffles. Nichiren Daishonin writes, the sun rises in the east and casts its rays to the west. The same is true of Buddhism. The sun of the humanistic philosophy of Nichiren Daishonin has risen high in the sky and is beginning to illuminate the world. The westward transmission of Buddhism has become a reality through the unprecedented development of our Soka movement. And again, let me state this. There are multiple Nichiren schools, okay? None of them ever took it upon themselves to actually try to achieve Kosen Rufu by spreading the Buddhism of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo throughout the world. None of them. Some of them might have created temples that were outside of Japan. It was strictly to support Japanese people that were living in other places. It was not to propagate this widely and broadly as it's required by the sutra itself. Bottom of page 31, first column, second column. Toward a new era of worldwide Kosen Rufu. In January 1998, in an essay sharing my feelings on turning 70, I wrote that my goal by 80 was the completion of the foundation for worldwide Kosen Rufu. Going on to page 32. With the completion of the Hall of the Great Vow for Kosen Rufu, which opened in Shinanomachi, Tokyo in November 2013, the time has come for all SGI members to joyously make fresh strides. So he's saying, all of you that are listening to this or hearing this for the first time, redevote yourself to your goal and your mission as a Bodhisattva of the earth. I declare that we have now solidly secured the magnificent foundations for Kosen Rufu and embarked with vigor on the second phase of worldwide Kosen Rufu. On this momentous fresh start, let us study a section from the Nichiren Daishonen's The True Aspect of All Phenomena and pledge together to open new horizons in our movement. In this chapter, I will diverge slightly from our normal format and share my thoughts more conversationally as if we were studying together in a small group. The section I would like to study with you this time is a very famous passage in which the Daishonin proclaims the great mission of the Bodhisattvas of the earth. And so the gray box here is from The True Aspect of All Phenomena, demonstrating the principle of emerging from the earth. Page 32. Now, no matter what, strive in faith, which I just read to you. He says is a single word of faith is the sharp sword, right?
Yes.
Now, no matter what, strive in faith and be known as a votary of the Lotus Sutra and remain my disciple for the rest of your life. If you are of the same mind as Nichiren, you must be a Bodhisattva of the earth. But again, he qualifies that. You've got to be of the same mind as me with the same sense of mission, the same goal, and the same faith of your true identity, or you're not there.
Yeah.
This isn't academic, and this is not for entertainment. This is serious stuff. Something that you have to be serious about to the depth of your life, because what you're going to go through to manifest it and share it is not going to be a simple process. It's going to require an earnest dedication, and that's what he's going to talk about and try and encourage us all to be on the path of. And if you are a Bodhisattva of the earth, there is not the slightest doubt that you have been a disciple of Shakyamuni Buddha from the remote past. The Lotus Sutra states, ever since the long distant past, I have been teaching and converting this multitude of Bodhisattvas that has emerged from the earth. And he mentions Shakyamuni because he's writing in 13th century Japan. Nobody knows who he is, okay? He's got to talk that way. But that's why I read to you the opening of the eyes, so that everybody could understand that he is the original teacher and he qualifies such himself. All right? There should be no discrimination among those who propagate the 5 characters of Myoho Rengekyo in the latter day of the law, be they men or women, which is a revolutionary concept at the time that he's stating this. Were they not bodhisattvas of the earth, they could not chant the Daimoku. Because chanting the Daimoku is what reveals you to be a bodhisattva of the earth with a mission to propagate this to the last moment of your life. At first, only Nichiren chanted Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, but then 2, 3, and 100 followed, chanting and teaching others. Propagation will unfold in this way in the future as well. Does this not signify emerging from the earth? At the time when the law has spread far and wide, the entire Japanese nation will chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo as surely as an arrow aimed at the earth cannot miss the target. But now you must build your reputation on the Lotus Sutra, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. When he's saying Lotus Sutra now, we're in the latter day. Lotus Sutra is not the correct teaching anymore. The correct teaching is now Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. And the Daishonin is Gosho. But now you must build your reputation on the Lotus Sutra, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, and give yourself up to it. Give yourself up to it. Do you know what he means when he says give yourself up to it?
Doubt-free faith.
What?
Doubt-free faith.
Devote yourself to the propagation of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo for the sake of all mankind, for the sake of Kosin Rufu. When you're talking about giving up yourself up to it, nothing is more important than you fulfilling your mission. Okay? That's the reason I'm doing what I'm doing. That's why I want to share this with you, and that's why I get emotional talking about it. Okay, so going on to page 33, first column, below the gray box. The SGI has put this passage into practice in its entirety. The Daishonin writes, now, no matter what, strive in faith and be known as a votary of the Lotus Sutra and remain my disciple for the rest of your life. We of the SGI have calmly and steadily followed our chosen path with complete self-assurance. He goes on to state that if you are of the same mind as Nichiren, and that's the qualifier, if you're not bought into that functional reality of who you are and why you're here, then this is all mind candy. Right? In other words, if I circled the word if, because it's only if one strives for Kosarufu in the same spirit as he does, you must be a Bodhisattva of the earth and a disciple of Shakyamuni Buddha from the remote past. And we've already talked about the difference between the remote past of Goyakujin Tingo and Kuon Gancho. He's talking about the original teacher. As disciples directly linked to the Daishonin through eternal ties, so we must be talking about the original teacher of Kuon Ganjo, right? That can never be severed. We of the SGI are comrades who have joined together in dedicating our lives to the vow of Kosen Rufu. We have striven selflessly in the same mind as Nichiren to realize the Daishonin's will and decree, to turn what he says in the Gosho into the reality of earth. Moreover, we are fulfilling our noble mission as Bodhisattvas of the earth to propagate the 5 or 7 characters of Myoho Renge Kyo, or the mystic law, in the spirit of equality and mutual respect, in accordance with the Daishonin's admonition that there should be no discrimination between men or women. He writes further, at first only Nichiren chanted Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, but then 2, 3, and 100 followed, chanting and teaching others. Propagation will unfold in this way in the future as well. We too practice in exact accord with this eternal and unchanging formula for the progression of Kosen Rufu. The spirit to stand up alone, to take personal initiative, which is what this group has done. You know, I might be the one talking, but you guys have all decided to join me. Okay? We are all standing up alone. The spirit to stand up alone, to take personal initiative, is the core spirit and essence of the SGI. We're not in any way doing something separate or different. Right. We're doing what each one of us karmically must, or we wouldn't all be sitting here at the table together, have already taken a vow to do. It didn't happen by accident. It was all based on karma. It was all based on causality. Right?
Yes.
Okay, so my mentor, Josei Toda, bottom of page 33, second column, my mentor, Josei Toda, called out to young people, youth, just one of you stand. A second, and then a third will definitely follow.
Yes.
Our members around the world have indeed demonstrated that when one pioneering individual takes the lead, 2, 3, and 100 will follow.
Yes.
In many localities and regions, Kosen Rufu has started from a single individual, and from there spread to one person and then another. Through such steady, persevering efforts to share Buddhism, we have created the great current of Kosen Rufu we have today. This is, like I said, this is going to be tough for me. Most importantly, the pioneering spirit of the early days of our movement is now being faithfully carried out by our youth. Young Bodhisattvas of the earth everywhere are energetically taking the lead in propagating Nichiren Buddhism with a sense of responsibility for realizing Kosen Rufu in their areas. What a wonderful age this is. What deep karmic ties these young people share. And I thank you, all the young people that listen to these videos. The SGI has indisputably demonstrated the Daishonin's principle of emerging from the earth. The Daishonin's assertion that propagation will unfold this way in the future as well is, I believe, President Kate is saying, I believe, nothing other than a prediction of the future emergence of SGI members, which is obviously it is. Disciples showing the greatness of their teacher. Page 34, first column at the bottom. In this section, the true aspect of all phenomena, all phenomena, Nichiren Daishonin quotes some lines from Emerging from the Earth, the Lotus Sutra's 15th chapter. Ever since the long distant past, I, Shakyamuni, have been teaching and converting this multitude of bodhisattvas that has emerged from the earth. And he qualifies then as that as being numberless major world system, dust particle corpus. This is important. It means that the Buddha and the newly arrived bodhisattvas who are his true disciples share ties from the infinite past. It also prepares the way for his preaching of the next chapter, the lifespan of the Thus Come One, which is the heart of the sutra's essential teaching, latter 14 chapters. To clarify, this is the second column, page 34, second full paragraph. To clarify the significance of Shakyamuni's statement, let us review the progression of events in the Emerging from the Earth chapter in which the bodhisattvas of the earth first appear. The essential teaching begins by clarifying who will spread the sutra after the Buddha's passing. It begins with, by the way, and now we're talking about the essential teaching. We're talking about the latter 14 chapters of the Lotus Sutra. We're not talking about Nam-myoho Renge-kyo because he's quoting the Lotus Sutra, he's quoting Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni doesn't propagate Nam-myoho Renge-kyo.
Right.
Do you understand? The essential teaching begins by, so the essential from the Emerging from the Earth chapter all the way to 28, Bodhisattva Universal Worthy. The essential teaching begins by clarifying who will spread the sutra after the Buddha's passing. It begins with the bodhisattvas already gathered at the assembly. Don't forget, there were already bodhisattvas from other worlds that had already all gathered to hear this. Those of the theoretical teaching, or the first 14 chapters, volunteering to do this. Remember, they all say, we'll do it. And he says, you're not qualified. But Shakyamuni rejects their offer and reveals that in this Sahe world of mine, there are bodhisattva mahasattva who are as numerous as the sands of the 60,000 Ganges rivers, and that they will spread the Lotus Sutra after his death. And by the way, if you're reading this, there's all kinds of references to the Threefold Lotus Sutra. LSOC 252 is where that comes from, page 252. And that they will spread the Lotus Sutra after his death. In response to Shakyamuni's words, a vast multitude of bodhisattvas emerges from the earth. Each of them, the sutra states, is the leader of their own great assembly. In addition, each brought with them a retinue equal in number to the sands of 60,000 Ganges rivers. So this mentor-disciple and everybody that hasn't yet been able to become a disciple, that they're on the path because they've already been exposed to the Buddha that has exposed them to Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. You get it? There's a difference between mentors and disciples that are engaged with the process of passing on the correct teaching now, and those that have made the cause that will manifest at some point in time for that relationship to establish as their true identity. This is a number of truly astronomical proportions, infinitely greater than our planet's population. Infinitely greater than our planet's population. Incidentally, in some transcriptions or copies of the Lotus Sutra translated into Chinese, the word emerge is written with two characters that literally means spring forth or come out dancing. The sudden dynamic appearance of the bodhisattvas of the earth startles the bodhisattvas already present and causes them to doubt. On behalf of the perplexed assembly, the Bodhisattva Maitreya asked Shakyamuni about the identity of these new arrivals, which none of them have ever seen or heard of before. He declares what a wondrous being the Buddha must be to have converted and taught so many followers. In response, Shakyamuni makes a statement that we examined earlier. Ever since the long distant past, Goyaku Jintengo, I have been teaching and converting this multitude. Later in the lifespan chapter, Shakyamuni discloses that his attainment of enlightenment for the first time in this world is just the provisional revelation of his enlightenment. Sanzen Jintengo from the second chapter, from the Expedient Means chapter. Yeah, Expedient Means chapter. In reality, he has attained enlightenment in the inconceivably remote past of Goyaku Jintengo, from Sanzen Jintengo to Goyaku Jintengo. This is the Buddha's so-called casting off the transient and revealing the true. The appearance of these remarkable disciples, the Bodhisattvas of the earth, is the occasion for showing the true greatness of their teacher. At this point, President Ikeda says, as he's taken this different format, I would like to stress again that the awareness of being Bodhisattvas of the earth is the starting point of our Soka movement. And I've talked about this, but I want to clarify it again. The actions of the Soka Gakkai's founding president, Tanesaburo Makaguchi, themselves embodied the practice of the Bodhisattvas of the earth. But Mr. Makaguchi didn't go out on the limb of qualifying we're all Bodhisattvas of the earth. That was Josei Toda's revelation in prison. Okay? So that's why President Ikeda is saying that the actions of Tanesaburo Makaguchi themselves embodied the practice of the Bodhisattvas of the earth. He was a Bodhisattva of the earth, even if he didn't qualify himself as being one. The second president, Josei Toda, meanwhile, stood up amid the devastated ruins of post-war Japan with the awareness that he was a Bodhisattva of the earth. The awareness occurred in prison. Through his efforts based on this awareness and commitment, because this is where we're all qualifying ourselves to be Bodhisattvas of the earth, fulfilling our mission for Kosen Rufu as disciples of Nichiren. President Toda didn't really talk so much about the Lotus Sutra. He really talked about Nichiren Daishonin's teachings in the Gosho. Really. Okay? It's President Ikeda who has the third. Why do we say the three presidents are so important? Because each one had a functional aspect of requirement. President Ikeda had to take all of this understanding from President Toda and President Makaguchi and conform it to historical Buddhism. And have it not be in like some weird Japanese different kind of thing. It had to be completely in accord, and it would have to be in accord if it's the correct teaching. So President Ikeda took it upon himself to do all the things that I read to you. That's why you could never repay your debt of gratitude to him, no matter what. Josei Toda, meanwhile, stood up amid the devastated ruins of post-war Japan with the awareness that he was a bodhisattva of the earth. Through his efforts, based on this awareness, that's where I got it. I got it from lectures on the sutras by Josei Toda way before Daisaku Ikeda started talking about any of this. Through his efforts, based on the awareness and commitment, the Daishonin's teaching came to pulse vibrantly in our organization, and a great path for development of Kosen Rufu in Japan was opened. And today, the SGI has built a network of bodhisattvas of the earth that extend all around the globe. Continuing on page 35, second column. Pardon me. Kosen Rufu is the mission of Soka. At a general meeting of the Soka Kyoiku Gakkai, the Value-Creating Education Society, the forerunner of today's Soka Gakkai, the one that President Makaguchi started, in a gathering, it was actually all educators. It wasn't really open to regular people. You had to be like a little kind of brainiac to be able to follow him. Mr. Makaguchi declared, we must guide the country in the direction of great good. Now, when he's talking about that great good, he's talking about his value creation philosophy, that it had been the basis of how he got pulled into practicing Nichiren Buddhism in the first place, right? That's why this was a gathering of teachers, because that's what he was. He was an educator. This is like making a landing in the face of the enemy, he's quoted as saying. He delivered this statement at a time when the Japanese nation was engaged in an insane war. By using the expression making a landing in the face of the enemy, Mr. Makaguchi was saying that Soka Gakkai members had to throw themselves into the midst of a Japanese society that was ignorant of Nichiren Buddhism, the true understanding of the correct understanding of Nichiren Buddhism, and boldly share its teachings with those around them. What's boldly share those teachings with those around them? Shakabuku. In other words, he was calling on each member to courageously, shakabuku, engage in dialogue, confidently proclaiming the truth of Buddhism, shakabuku, and sharing personal experiences in faith, the proof of actual fact. He urged that only through this tenacious process of spreading the correct Buddhist teaching could Japan be saved. I believe that, at the top of page 36, we can help our families. He urged that only through this tenacious process of spreading the correct Buddhist teaching could Japan be saved. I believe that we can help our families and society and contribute in small part to the realization of Kosen Rufu, Mr. Makaguchi said. Okay. The ruling militarist authorities arrested him during its wartime crackdown on the Soka Gakkai, or on the Kyoiku Gakkai. Okay. In prison, he sternly replied to the interrogating officers that Kosen Rufu is the process of purifying with the truth of the mystic law, the philosophy and ideals prevalent in the corrupt age of the latter day. Mr. Makaguchi had a profound awareness of Kosen Rufu as the Soka Gakkai's mission, even though he wasn't qualifying it as worldwide propagation because he was just a teacher in Japan with a bunch of, you understand? President Toda now is going to take a next step. Mr. Makaguchi had a profound awareness of Kosen Rufu as the Soka Gakkai's mission. In the months leading up to his arrest in July 1943, Mr. Makaguchi began to repeatedly insist to his disciples that the organization must cast off the transient and reveal the true. What did he mean by that? Mr. Toda, who was also imprisoned, had a deep awakening to its meaning. All right? This is where it actually comes forth as the teaching that we all propagate today. The history and conviction of the Soka Gakkai. First column, page 36. Soon after he was inaugurated as second Soka Gakkai president in May 1951, Mr. Toda published a lengthy essay entitled The History and Conviction of the Soka Gakkai. In it, he wrote of the underlying Soka Gakkai spirit as follows: our life is eternal, without beginning and without end. Kuon Ganjo. I am now aware that we have all appeared in this world with the great mission to propagate Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, or the 7-character Lotus Sutra, in the latter day of the law. If I define our status in accord with this conviction, we are all Bodhisattvas of the earth. Okay? That's where this all comes from. All right? Second column, page 36. This was the conviction of Mr. Toda, and that's why the other schools don't consider us to, each of us as chanting in the Sahe world to be Bodhisattvas of the earth. We don't qualify. We're followers. Even Nichiren Shoshu. We're followers of the Bodhisattvas of the earth rather than actualizing, being, reality. This was the conviction of Mr. Toda, who was released from prison on July 3rd, 1945, heir to the spirit of his mentor, who died in prison for his beliefs. He noted that he alone had this awareness. He noted that he alone, President Toda, understood that what he had realized in prison had not ever been really perceived in the manner that he had now perceived it. He noted that he alone had this awareness, with few of his disciples truly able to grasp his state of mind. And the Soka Gakkai itself had not yet cast off the transient and revealed the true. Okay? Is everybody with me?
Yes.
All right. Subsequently, after overcoming various hardships, including the collapse of his businesses and stepping down from his position as Soka Gakkai General Director to protect the organization from being adversely affected by his business troubles, President Toda facing the 3 obstacles and the 4 devils, just like we all do, no different than us. None of these guys are different than us. We're the same as all of them. That's what you really have to understand. Mr. Toda became the 2nd president of the Soka Gakkai. The Soka Gakkai was reborn. He wrote, soon a great awareness emerged within the Gakkai as a whole, and action began based on that great conviction that we are Bodhisattvas of the earth. He also wrote, in terms of the teachings, in other words, in our outward activities, we are Bodhisattvas of the earth. While in terms of faith, we are the followers and descendant disciples of Nichiren Daishonin. Descendant disciples of Nichiren Daishonin. So if we are, so this is like, again, this is from Kuan. That we're the original disciples of the original teacher. That's what that sentence just said. We are Bodhisattvas of the earth, while in terms of faith, we are the followers and descendant disciples of Nichiren Daishonin. It was with this conviction and resolve, he asserted, that we must strive selflessly and tirelessly for Kosen Rufu. Because we haven't made our advent prior to 1943 or 45, whenever this started. We're all around when Nam-myoho Renge-kyo has been revealed. We're all around after the first 3 presidents have done everything that's necessary for us to do Kosen Rufu. Okay? He further stated, this conviction is the central philosophy of the Soka Gakkai and is now coming to pervade it. So what he's qualifying is that it's taken a long time, but we're only now really everybody's really on this beginning to get on the same page. And they're beginning to get on the same page because of President Ikeda. Okay? This indeed is casting off the transient and revealing the true, is it not? President Ikeda is asking casually as he might be sitting here in my chair talking to you. He's saying, are you not a Buddha in your present form right now? If you have the same mind as Nichiren, if you have the correct faith that you're all nodding your head every time I mention it, good for you then, right? The entire Soka Gakkai rose up to engage in the shared struggle of mentor and disciple, because you don't come to this wisdom without somebody helping you get there, period. All members aware of their mission as Bodhisattvas of the earth and vowing to realize Kosen Rufu through their own efforts, which is us, which is now a lot of other people that have joined us that we've not met personally yet. But they're all very grateful to all of you. Frankly, they say it all the time. Thank you to the group. I also took my mentor's spirit, President Ikeda continues, at the top of page 37, first full paragraph. I also took my mentor's spirit and vow as my own, and with the power of a charging lion, fought my hardest. I rose to the most daunting of challenges and blazed new trails for Kosen Rufu. I sought out one capable person after another who would fight alongside me. I fostered them, encouraged them, and worked together with them to build a magnificent people's movement. Middle of page 37, first column. My disciples, form your ranks and follow me. As the Lotus Sutras emerging from the Earth chapter clearly indicates, when Bodhisattva superior practices, the leader of the Bodhisattvas of the earth, appears in the world to carry out the worldwide propagation of the law in the evil latter age, after the Buddha's passing, innumerable legions of Bodhisattvas are also certain to come forth in a steady stream to share his noble mission. And as that I showed is already qualified in the early transmitted teachings, that's each one of us. That's not one individual. The Daishonin writes, Nichiren alone took the lead in carrying out the task of the Bodhisattvas of the earth. Now at the beginning of the latter day of the law, I, Nichiren, am the first to embark on propagating throughout Jampavippa, the entire world, the 5 characters of Myoho Renge-kyo. My disciples, form your ranks and follow me and surpass even Mahake Shayapa and Ananda, Tiantai or Dengyo. The Daishonin appears as the forerunner and then encourages his disciples to rally together and follow his lead. The place where, pardon me, second column, page 37. The place where the Bodhisattvas of the earth carry out their activities is this so-called Sahe world, which is also known as a world in which one must exercise forbearance and learn to endure. From the orally transmitted teachings, page 169. The Lotus Sutra was expounded to guide to enlightenment all living beings in this suffering-filled world in which we live. All living beings. And the environment takes on that aspect when we accomplish that. Wherever we accomplish that. That's why our island is so beautiful. In the Sutra's theoretical teaching, Shakyamuni's voice-hearer disciples have the great fortune of receiving prophecies of their future attainment of Buddhahood. Yet later, when they make a vow to spread the Lotus Sutra after Shakyamuni's passing, they show disdain for this Sahe world by expressing their wish to teach the Lotus Sutra in worlds other than this one. In contrast, the Bodhisattvas of the essential teaching, who gather at the ceremony in the air, vow to achieve Kosarufu here in the Sahe world. Even so, Shakyamuni rejects them too. This highlights how teaching the Lotus Sutra in the Sahe world in the latter day is so very difficult. The most difficult of all. As the sutra makes eminently clear, teaching and spreading the sutra will inevitably result in the rise of the three powerful enemies and every other sort of persecution. So if you're getting persecution, you're doing the right thing. If you're being slandered by other people, you're doing the right thing. Only the Bodhisattvas of the earth, if you have that pure, correct spirit, and that's still happening, pardon me. Only the Bodhisattvas of the earth who have practiced as one with the Buddha since the remote past, as one, they're inseparable. Do you understand what that's saying? Only the Bodhisattvas of the earth who have practiced as one with the Buddha since the remote past can persist in this struggle in the face of these harsh tempests of persecution and opposition. Because most people will quit. And that's why so many people have. You know, they couldn't take it. Only those of us that stay on and keep going until the last moment of our life are worthy of the praise that's being given here, frankly speaking. It's not just a matter of having Nam Myoho Renge Kyo coming out of your mouth. Are you a disciple of Nichiren? Are you devoted to Kosen Rufu? Do you begrudge your life? Referring to the Bodhisattvas of the earth and their momentous mission, the Daishonin explains to his followers, these Bodhisattvas are the ones who had thoroughly forged their resolve, their resolve. The miraculous emergence of the Soka Gakkai, page 38. The time for the Bodhisattvas of the earth to carry out their mission is the evil age of the latter day, and the place where they will do so is this Sahe world. Having chosen the most challenging circumstances, they rise into action here and now to help those experience the greatest suffering attain enlightenment. Nichiren Buddhism teaches the principle of voluntarily assuming the appropriate karma. Finally, it comes out. Thank you, Mr. O'Hara. Nichiren Buddhism teaches the principle of voluntarily assuming the appropriate karma. In other words, you don't just imagine, okay, you have to make the causes for that karma to manifest. Okay? So, whatever you did that you've experienced that came back as a little bit of funkiness, you did that funkiness for the sake of the law, frankly. Because you're supposed to live through that process and change and do human revolution, and it manifests as a Buddha in your present form, regardless of who you are, how you are, what you are. Okay? Nichiren Buddhism teaches the principle of voluntarily assuming the appropriate karma. So all the shit that hits you all the time, you asked for. You said, I can take it. I'll take it. I'll win. I won't give up. I won't be discouraged. I'll never go Titan. This represents the transformation from a passive life to an active, self-motivated life. One from just going to meetings and listening to the speaker, to one beginning to study and embrace the teaching and become the Buddha in your present form. One based on the conviction that we have voluntarily chosen to be born into difficult and challenging circumstances to lead others to enlightenment. We don't lament the reality of our life. By making a vow for Kosen Rufu. That's the whole point. That's why we do this. We've taken a vow. We're supposed to take on whatever it is that appears for us to take on. And nothing that we have to take on is anything that we didn't say, I'll kick its ass. If you couldn't handle something too hard, you wouldn't have already said that. And different people have different levels of what they must endure. Okay? So it's all based on you. You're not limited. You don't have to take Tatsanakuchi. I don't have to do Tatsanakuchi to be one with the Daishonin or live on Sato Island, but I got to be Tom. I got to be everything that is Tom. All right? And I got to transform. I've got to do human revolution. That's what we all have to do. Not talking, not just a talking point of words. Actualized. This represents the transformation from a passive life to an active, self-motivated life, one based on the conviction that we have voluntarily chosen to be born into difficult and challenging circumstances to lead others to enlightenment. Because without going through all that shit, we won't be able to help people to get through all their shit. That's the bottom line. We'll be talking words again instead of talking as a mentor. By making a vow for Kosen Rufu based on this principle, we can transform our karma into our mission. Thank you, Mr. O'Hara. When we awaken to our mission from the remote past, we will gain a new sense of self. A new sense of self. We actually begin to perceive ourselves as Buddhists. It's not just a happy talk.
Right.
Okay? Which means we must be serious and take on the responsibility of being that. Or else we are full of shit and we're slandering. Okay? So this sense of self is really like, you can't go back. You can't go back. And if you did, then you were always full of shit. You never were really what you said you were. We will be able to cast off the transient and reveal the true in our lives and enable our real potential to shine forth. Nobody that knows me from 30 years ago would ever think I'm sitting here talking like this. Those who have awakened to their mission as Bodhisattvas of the earth fear nothing, because it's all on Nichiren. It's his promise. We don't have any reason to fear because he promises us we have nothing to fear. When we take on the mission to help others become happy, courage and strength well up spontaneously from within us. We don't worry about whether people are going to think we're weird doing what we're doing. How wondrous are the karmic ties we share as Bodhisattvas of the earth, and how noble the vow for Kosen Rufu. I will never forget the impact, and I can't believe that after all this time I'm now reading Daisaku Ikeda say exactly what I already understood without reading it from Daisaku Ikeda. It's that's why it's so emotional for me. I learned this from Mr. Matsuoka. I will never forget the impassioned words of Chingiz Aymatov. It's Russian, dear. How would I say that? Is that close enough?
Yeah.
Okay. My wingman speaks Russian.
Kyrgyz. It's a Kyrgyz.
Okay, and what's how do I say that?
Kyrgyz.
Kyrgyz. The Kyrgyz writer with whom I met and spoke on many occasions. Is there no end to animosity and hatred in this human world? We are always looking for enemies, forced into feelings of mutual hostility. Many have self-righteously, too, rejecting dialogue, insisting on their own truth and refusing to recognize the good in anyone else. Ours is a world of darkness in which fellow human beings war with one another and destroy nature. Amid this stark reality, the SGI, an ideal organization that could be rightly called a modern utopia, has emerged, a fact that may be difficult to immediately fathom. Mr. Aymatov. Mr. Aymatov also lauded the SGI for not destroying others, but spreading the light of humanism to every corner of the world through a flexible approach based on firm convictions and building a network of mutual understanding that allows others to live fully and freely. He further declared, the Soka Gakkai emerged in a time of great upheavals in human history, such as war, conflict, and unending bloodshed. That is truly amazing. Its emergence is the hope of humanity. The top of page 39, first column. The mission of Bodhisattvas of the earth is truly great and noble beyond measure. It transcends all differences, including those of ethnicity, race, nationality, and gender. So if you're a racist, you're not really on the same page as I am right now, or anything that I'm reading here. Now, you should really consider or reconsider those prejudices. Or if you're a misogynist and you think men are better than women. I mean, all of this, again, let me say it again because it's so important, because this is describing what the correct perspective should be, which gives us the ability to perfect our perspective if it's not quite in accord with this. It transcends all differences. That means we don't hold any differences against or oppose in opposition to others, including those of ethnicity, race, nationality, and gender. It is a mission that emanates from the vast creative life force that pervades the very depths of the lives of all human beings. One who is awakened to this is called a bodhisattva of the earth. So the reason I emphasize that is that if you're not awakened to that, you're still not quite there from where I'm coming from today and where this Gosho lecture is coming from as it relates to President Ikeda and what he's conveying to all of us. Each person is an entity endowed with the supreme Buddha nature. By encouraging and respecting one another as fellow human beings living together on this planet, we can bring forth the power to tap the limitless potential within ourselves and others. We can bring forth the power to create the values and of happiness and peace. This is also our profound mission. And I'm not defaming anybody that doesn't agree with these points. I'm qualifying that Daisaku Ikeda is qualifying that this is the teaching. This is the correct understanding. And that transformation will come if you keep chanting Daimoku with an open mind.
Yes.
Because no Buddha has any of those aspects in conflict.
Right.
We of the this is also our profound mission. We of the SGI have appeared in this world having vowed to dedicate our lives to this mission of trying to help everybody awaken to the equalness of all of us, including Buddhahood. The Great March of the People of the 20th Century, page 39, first column. The Great March of the People has been a powerful groundswell for change many times throughout history. The Salt March with Mahatma Gandhi and his disciples in the lead was a major breakthrough that gave momentum to the movement for Indian independence from the colonial rule of Great Britain. It stirred waves of courage that spread out to inspire people throughout India. Coincidentally, the Salt March took place in 1930, the year the Soka Gakkai was established. Another example of such a march was the historic Civil Rights March on Washington, D.C. in 1963, 50 years ago. I witnessed it myself. It inspired me. This march, in which close to 250,000 ordinary people stood in majestic dignity. They weren't all black, by the way. You know that, right? Okay. Is vividly described by one of its leaders, Martin Luther King Jr. The quote, "The enormous multitude was the living, beating heart of an infinitely noble movement, the equality of all humans. It was an army without guns, but not without strength. The gathering that day transcended differences of class, profession, and religious affiliation, as there are a lot of Jewish people there. All its participants united by a single ideal," quote, end quote, King observed. Though on a different level, our SGI movement for Kosen Rufu is also a great march of the people, one that has called forth bodhisattvas of the earth all around the world, spreading an enormous groundswell for peace and hope. After calmly stating When great evil occurs, great good follows, because good always defeats evil. What could any of you have to lament? The Daishonin points out. After calmly stating, when great evil occurs, great good follows, what could any of you have to lament? Facing the difficulties that you do as bodhisattvas of the earth. The Daishonin points out, when Bodhisattva superior practices emerged from the earth, did he not emerge dancing? Bodhisattva superior practices, the leader of the Bodhisattvas of the earth, is said to have sprung forth dynamically from the earth as if he were dancing. And he was not alone. The Lotus Sutra states that immeasurable bodhisattvas of the earth emerged at the same instant. The sutra also goes on to say that the assembly, page 40, which was gathered at the ceremony in the air, subsequently saw this immeasurable legion of bodhisattvas that emerged from the earth fill the sky over countless lands. To me, President Kata says, this is his personal interpretation, to me, this depicts the great march of the bodhisattvas of the earth, overflowing with unsurpassed joy, a scene of utter freedom and vibrant energy, yet also of solemn calm, played out on a stage of unfathomable scale. Encouraging the person right in front of us, page 40, first column. In the supernatural powers of the Thus Come One, the Lotus Sutra's 21st chapter, Shakyamuni transfers the essence of the Lotus Sutra to Bodhisattva superior practices, leader of the Bodhisattvas of the earth. He is described as follows. As the light, superior practice is described as follows. As the light of the sun and moon can banish all obscurity and gloom, so this person, as he advances through the world, can wipe out the darkness of living beings. From the Lotus Sutra, page 318, the LSOC. Mr. Makaguchi heavily underlined this passage in his personal copy of Nichiren's writings. The Bodhisattvas of the earth are a source of great light who impart courage and strength. They warmly illuminate the way ahead for those walking through the night of loneliness and anxiety. They wipe away people's tears of despair and give them hope. They dispel the darkness of ignorance and brighten people's lives with the light of compassion and wisdom. Not personal opinions, compassion and wisdom. This reference to the darkness of living beings is not something abstract. The important thing is to actually help banish the darkness of suffering shrouding the lives of individuals in our immediate environment. Reaching out to those in front of us, engaging with them, giving them hope and courage for living, and empowering them to attain happiness through their own efforts. This is truly the definition of a world religion. It ultimately comes down to whether the teaching has the power to revitalize the lives of individuals right in front of us. The Daishonin writes, here, a single individual has been used as an example, but the same thing applies equally to all living beings. This isn't about the stories of what happened in Japan. This is about us in our daily lives. The SGI has been undertaking this effort all around the world. When the 19th century Italian thinker and revolutionary Giuseppe Mazzini heard people say that someone was just, he tested that claim by asking, how many souls are saved by him? Indeed, action for the sake of good and the welfare of others is what defines a truly just person. As Mazzini put it, it is not enough that thought be grounded on truth. The thinker's life must visibly express it in his acts. Wow. Page 41, top of page 41, first column. Expanding the network of bodhisattvas of the earth. This means, again, you've got to actually do it. You've got to be doing it. You can't just, yeah, good for you. It's not like we're not in a club, okay? We're actually Buddhists. Buddhists don't belong to a club. They're there for the purpose of making all living beings equal to themselves. expanding, and that only comes from action. Expanding the network of Bodhisattvas of the earth around the world. We're almost there. The renowned American journalist Norman Cousins, with whom I've held a dialogue, said that simply speaking of brotherly love and compassion will not suffice. The crucial thing is to reach out and take hold of the one who happens to be nearest. The SGI movement has overcome every imaginable barrier. Differences of national boundaries and social systems, of ethnicity and language, of ideology and philosophical background, of gender and age, of social class and standing. Its members have also overcome barriers created by illnesses, disabilities, and all other kinds of challenging circumstances. Through sharing and encouraging one another with the message that all people, irrespective of their present sufferings or hardships, have a right to become happy, the SGI has spread a beautiful network of Bodhisattvas of the earth around the globe. Here I will reconfirm the SGI's mission with you as follows. 1. As an organization of Bodhisattvas of the earth directly connected to Nichiren Daishonin, that means of the same mind as Nichiren, the SGI will forever be dedicated to realizing the great vow for Kosen Rufu and work tirelessly for world peace and the happiness of humanity. 2. With faith based on the spirit of the oneness of mentor and disciple and the unity of many in body, one in mind, the SGI will forever strive to open the way to the triumph of humanity. 3. Acting with self-initiative and respect for each individual, the SGI will forever illuminate people's lives and society with a light of courage and hope. Standing on the side of the people, the SGI will forever champion the welfare of the people and advance together with them. And 5, transcending all forms of discrimination and prejudice. That's why I said what I said about the racism thing and all the other things that were mentioned in that paragraph. We really have to kind of do a reality check on what our real concept of other humans is. Transcending all forms of, that means, and transcending just means understanding correctly, okay? Transcending all forms of discrimination and prejudice, the SGI will forever spread its network of human equality. A new age has now come. Page 41, second column. The path of humanism that we are walking stretches widely before us. No matter when or where we begin our journey, the path is waiting for us. It's waiting for you. It is a path we can follow without hesitation or fear. The warm and encouraging words of the great American poet Walt Whitman resounds in my heart. Camarado, I give you my hand. I give you my love more precious than money. I give you myself before preaching or law. Will you give me yourself? Will you come travel with me? Shall we stick by each other as long as we live? The gaze of the Bodhisattvas of the earth. First column, page 42. The gaze of the Bodhisattvas of the earth in the Lotus Sutra, filled with the gratitude for the eternal ties linking them to their teacher, Shakyamuni, is always directed toward the future, as is the gaze of the Buddha. They are brimming with the dynamism of dancing forth to take part in the great struggle of spreading the law. In his History and Conviction of the Soka Gakkai, Mr. Toda wrote, in the past 700 years, there has never been an organization like the Soka. Has there ever been an organization like the Soka Gakkai? The time has now come. The time has now come for the great propagation of the law. Standing up now with fresh determination and commitment as Bodhisattvas of the earth constitutes our own personal challenge. Our own personal challenge to cast off the transient and reveal the true. To actually do what's necessary to become the Buddha in our present form. For it to not be happy talk, to be an actualized reality in our lives. A truly fitting challenge as we prepare to enter a new era of worldwide Kosen Rufu. All people in the depths of their lives are Bodhisattvas of the earth, a fact to which they can be awakened through contact with other Bodhisattvas of the earth. My disciples, rise up and set forth with fresh vitality and vigor to take your places on a new stage where you will carry out your human revolution. The world of tomorrow is waiting. Humanity of the future is waiting for the great march of the Soka Bodhisattvas of the earth. The Soka Bodhisattvas of the earth. That's the difference between what he was just talking about, the disciples, the ones from the Lotus Sutra. Let your victory cheers, filled with the supreme joy of a life dedicated to Kosen Rufu, resound proudly in the place where you are and in every part of the world as we make our way together toward a humanistic century of peace. Thank you. That's it. See you next time.
Thank you.